Hi everyone. I am Natalie and we have
Kira.
Kira here today. So we will introduce ourselves really quickly. So I'm Natalie. I am the director of Nochi Studios, directing the games. I'm just really project managing everything, coordinating, and doing odds and ends here and there. Um, and I'll let Kira talk about her role a little bit.
Hello, I'm Kira, and I am Nochi Studios programmer. So I am writing the code, putting stuff together into the games.
So we're doing something a little bit different. Normally, we do have another podcast series called Snack and Otome, where we talk with guests and talk about the otome industry and just games and just various things about it. We're starting this new series, tentatively called Nochi Studios Unveiled, where it's just going behind the scenes of like what we are doing, what we're up to, and just sort of give people a look on the development that's happening. So we wanted to start this off with Sifting Thyme because this was our very first studio title that was released back in 2020. It made what Nochi Studios is today to become like a full-fledged company and everything. So yeah, so it felt fitting to start this with Sifting Thyme, and then also just to talk about, why are we going back to Sifting Thyme, because it is our first studio title. It was already published on mobile. And then Kira is going to give some awesome behind the scenes details about things that are going on the dev sides and like challenges that we're dealing with, which is why this remake was needed. Feel free to drop in questions at any time. We want this to be interactive and trying to answer some of the questions that you might have, things that you're curious about that we can answer. So really quickly, first we'll just give a timeline of the game. So it did release in 2020. And it was a tiered release because this was our very first title. It had been in development since 2018. So it's a very, very, very long time versus in our recent game, we launched that game in less than a year. Like I think in like 7 months, right, Kira? Like we started in March and then we launched in October. Okay, so I guess I can't do the
Yeah,
math right now.
something like that.
Yeah, something like that. So Sifting Thyme was a lot longer because we didn't have the development chops yet. We were still building up our processes, learning how it works, and figuring out all of our tech stack and everything. At that time, we used RunPy. I think as an indie developer, especially for visual novels, that is like the most well-known engine for indie developers. That's very accessible, easy to use. However, you'll notice that most RenPy games go to PC and they publish on itch. We decided to do mobile because it made sense at that time. That was our business model. We went through some pitch competitions we were invested in, and that's what investors were interested in. Mobile market was like dominating, starting in like 2016, kept going and growing, right? It is slightly changing now, but right now, mobile market is still dominating in terms of sheer number of players, accessibility, and the monetization model. So for us, it made sense that we also wanted to go into mobile because we're in the tech industry, we're invested in, we did, the whole business side of things. Um, However, RenPy is not great with mobile, especially if you do a ton of customization. So we couldn't get a lot of things to work. It was actually released staggered. It first released on Android in April because it did drive well decently with um, Android, Google Play Store. However, it does not drive well with iOS. If you are familiar with iOS App Store and just Apple's ecosystems, there's just a lot of rules that they have, a lot of frameworks. Kira, you can probably attest to this because you're always dealing with their regulations and whatnot. I guess, like from your perspective, what is the most frustrating thing about the Apple ecosystem?
I feel like they're more likely to reject it for non-issues when we go to submit the build. I feel like we've gotten a
That's
couple
true.
rejections that they misunderstood something or like it just wasn't the issue they were describing.
Yeah, that's true. And I think that like goes to like sort of Apple's quality, right? Like they just check every single thing. And to your
Mm,
point, they're just rejecting. We have to like prove to them why it's supposed to be that way or like why it's not an issue and things like that. So they are versus Google is just like they approve everything for the most part. So Apple was released much, much, much later in 2020 because we kept having to work that out. It was an Apple approval issue, but it was also mostly a RenPy issue because we couldn't get the code to work. As most of you know, and you've probably read our reviews, and we know this, there was a slot that was meant for the skip functionality in the game. So we had intended to have a skip functionality. However, because of the problems with RenPy, we could not make it work, especially on mobile. It just would not have the skip functionality that we wanted to work. It just kept bugging things out. I think in the past we had images that became memes of like faceless Tylers or just like headless Tylers and stuff like that, which was like pretty disturbing. So we just felt like we couldn't publish the game with that skip feature with all those visual issues, and also would like bug out some of the saving that was happening, and so like the routes wouldn't be accurate. We decided this year that we wanted to finally go after the Steam PC market. So we first tested out with Untold Atlas, that went super smooth. Then Sweetcore Brews, our most recent title, we were able to develop PC at the same time as mobile. So that was like the first time we did that, and it went super smooth again. So it was time to go back and develop PC version for Sifting Thyme and finally address the issues with the skip, all the problems that we had that people reported for Sifting Thyme. And also, it was removed by Google Play Store. So for new users who can't see it on the Play Store, if you have an Android phone, it was removed because it's not up to date. Google and Apple, they're both constantly updating their specs and they require apps to stay up to date too. But because of the RenPy situation again, like it just is not up to date. We couldn't get it up to date to work without having to rehaul everything. So it was removed from the Play Store. I think we were first notified around like April timeframe. It might have been earlier, but like we didn't hear from users until like the April timeframe, I want to say. And did we even get a message from Google? I don't think we did. It's like we found out from players, right?
Yeah, I remember getting warnings way back when saying that there was like a deadline for the update they were requiring, but I don't remember
Mm-hmm.
getting one when it actually got taken off.
Right, right. So we do get updates a lot from or warnings from Google's like, hey, you need to do this, you need to do this. I think there's one that we have to work through too soon. There's one coming
Probably.
up. There's always one or two going on. But yeah, so we just got removed from the Play Store with no like actual notification of like, hey, FYI, you're removed now. So yeah, we really wanted to put this back up there, make it accessible for people again. So we actually made the decision. It was a very quick decision where like it wasn't part of our strategic map or anything as a company. We decided to remake Sifting Thyme like right after Sweetcore because we were just like, okay, what are we gonna do next? And then we thought, you know what? Maybe it's time to go back to Sifting Thyme and fix this. Like we already ported Untold Atlas from mobile version to Steam, so we know we can do it. But the difference here is it's not a port, it's a complete redevelopment because RenPy is just not working for us. So all of our other games after Sifting Thyme, so from Somnium onwards, was on Unity. We wanted to make this on Unity, especially since we're interested in publishing in console too. So we have plans to have it available for Nintendo Switch. There's also potentially interest for Xbox and PlayStation as well, TBD. But in order to make that happen, RenPy is just not a viable option, especially without features like skip button. So we decided that, you know what, let's take a tackle on this. But since we have to scrap everything and rehaul everything, and that is why we decided to do a Kickstarter launch because it is going to take us quite a bit of time. And I think that segues really well, actually, to Kira. What do you think is the biggest challenge you've dealt with this rehaul of having to redevelop from scratch and like figure out the mess of the jumble from the RenPy code to now making a Unity version?
Yeah, so the dialogues, because of the way RenPy works, the dialogues for the original version were written directly into code. But from Somnium onwards, we've been kind of translating scripts into like a data format and then using code to put the data onto the screen. So I was having to figure out a way to get pre-written code in a different coding language into the data format that we use in our dialogue system now. So the conversion process of that was the biggest challenge, I'd say, but it's done. It's in
Yeah,
progress.
finally.
Mostly done.
Finally. Yeah, I mean, like, it's done, but we're still testing and we keep catching things. That's like, okay, we have to
Mhm.
tweak this, we have to tweak that. So it's like done, but
Yeah.
dot 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 as we keep finding issues and having to fix it.
Mhm.
Um, what was the thing that was most surprising for you having to rehaul the game?
Um, it's probably the dialogues just in general, like seeing, because it's very different when you do dialogues directly in code than like data. So they just work completely differently from what I expected going into it because it's not like what we've been doing since.
Yeah, and to give some insight into that, like the way we've been developing the other games, we divvy up our work and we sort of work and everything flows smoothly to come together to a great product at the end. Um, with Sifting Time, there was a lot more overlapping roles. Um, for an example, at that time, like I was coding some of it with Renpai, because I think that's the appeal for most indie people is that with Renpai, like you don't have to be a programmer and you can do it yourself. But as Kira mentioned, it's like coding it directly has its problems too. Um, which versus now, like Alexandra and I do not touch code at all. Like we're able to focus on the things that we're good at and that will drive, the studio forward. And like Kira is just killing it on the programming end. But like, back then, that was not the case. Like we were just like all over the place. So that was also very different. Um, so talking about other differences, one of the big things, and hi Arya, good to see you. Thank you for your support all the time. So Arya mentioned that we have new pronouns in the skip button, and that is true. So one thing that we thought about is like in the past we were able to make she, her, he, him happen, but we could not make they, them happen as a pronoun. Again, some of the limitations with RunPy versus with Unity, it's a lot more robust. It's easier for us to handle, things like that. So we are able to make that happen. Right now, it's like halfway done. Like you've taken care of the code side of things, Kira, right? Um, but it's not done on the UI side right now, which is on me. So like I still have to design what that experience is when you first jump into the game and select your pronouns, and how that impacts all the scenes, or not the scenes, but like the backgrounds and everything. Because depending on your pronoun option, you do get different backgrounds and slightly different scenes. So we just got to clean that up a little bit. So that is a new thing. Another big thing why this is a bigger project, which is why it warranted the Kickstarter campaign needs of like why we also needed funding to help cover like the time it's going to take to rehaul this, is that it's for PC, right? And the buttons were pretty big on mobile. Like here's like my phone, like the buttons were like huge chunks of blocks, and on PC that's just like a bad experience. Like you don't want to have a huge block on your screen and have to move your mouse over to like tap only 3 blocks at a time and click and drag the blocks around. So we are actually, I don't know if we've redesigned blocks. We have to look at that probably as I'm
That
talking
that
about
one's
this.
pending. Yeah, that's a
Yeah,
new
yeah.
one.
I'm thinking about this. I don't think we put that on the ticket yet. So yes, as we're talking, now we're just designing live. We're thinking about
There's
issues
another thing.
live. Yeah. But the other issue was that the settings and some of the options, like your Snapchat, your Snap Buzz option, they came up as buttons on the phone. And that made sense because like it was sort of like the meta of it, right? Was like you're doing it on your phone. Well, you're not, that's not the case with PC. So we have to redesign some of the screens. So we're putting like some phone graphics in and then like pulling all the buttons into a phone screen. So it's going to look different. It's going to look familiar. It's going to play familiar, but the UI, the graphics are going to look slightly different because it is going to be optimized for PC. Um, then there's been a lot of small quality of life changes. Do you want to talk about any of them in particular, Kira?
Um, The most recent one that I'm thinking of is adding text to the tabs in the library screen. So it's not just the color, like yellow was Snap Buzz, it actually says Snap Buzz now. That
Yeah,
was a little thing
yeah,
I put in.
for sure, because it's like you don't know what that is if you're just jumping in for the first time. Um,
Yeah.
and I think it's also like you might think it's Snapchat, but since we call it something different, right? It's just like we probably have to remind people that it's actually we can't use the word Snapchat because it's IP, right?
Yeah.
Copyrighted, and so we call it something different. Some other ones that we've done is when we've been playtesting, we've just been noticing like how old it looks, like outdated. When the text message system was designed at that time, if you look up apps like Instagram, Instagram is totally different today compared to 2 years ago, compared to when this was first scoped out in 2018. So if you look at 2018 Instagram, very different. And at that time, also, when we had been designing it in 2018, we were probably looking at references of like 2017, 2016, even. So, and even like text messages, the text message of Sifting Time, the version, um, sorry, I think my internet like lit for a second. So
Good.
the text message was looking at the old version of iPhone text messages. If you look at iPhone text messages from like early 2010s, completely different look till today. So, yeah, I think we opened it up recently and we were like, this looks ugly.
Yeah. The sizing was
And
all off too with the bigger screen.
sizing off, like outdated looking colors, and just, yeah, like it's not as much of an eyesore, I think, again, when you're playing on your phone, but it's an eyesore when you pull it up on the PC screen.
Yeah.
So that's also been overhauled. Hopefully, the graphics, we hope you all think it looks nicer and cleaner too, and more up to date. um, there's other like small things we've added to make it feel more foam-like too. Like when you get notifications that pop up from the top to the bottom or top of the screen, right, and pull down those banners. So we had implemented things like that in Somnium 11, and we're like, you know what, let's bring it back. So we have little notifications now. So if you get a snap buzz, a clickogram, or a text message, you'll get a little thing that pops down and tells you that you received something. So things to, again, quality of life improvements. Um, Yeah, anything else that you can think of, Kira? That's like a bigger rehaul that we've done?
I think those are the
Oh,
big ones. Oh,
yeah. But we did have a brainstorm session this past week.
yeah.
One of our so we have an intern, his name's Peter, and he was playing through the FaceTime. Like he was not enjoying the experience.
Yeah.
So yeah, you guys had a pretty good brainstorm if you want to talk about that.
Yeah. So the problem was the screens that kind of transition you into the FaceTimes, mostly with Tyler. I think I've only seen the ones with Tyler so far, but um that he didn't like the way the transition looked. And then also when you're skipping, if you just like skip into the FaceTime, there wasn't much of an indication that you were in a FaceTime if you had missed the scene telling you, like calling Tyler or whatever. So we had a brainstorm to fix up the calling Tyler's opening screens and ending screens. Because in the original version, it's just like a black screen with a little red hang up button, and it says like calling Tyler. And I think the end call doesn't even say anything. It's just that screen.
Yeah.
So we were, yeah, coming up with ways to make it a little bit less ugly.
Just so basic. It really was basic because it was our first project. It was on RenPy,
Mhm.
and we don't have that like opportunity to
Yeah.
juicify things. Again, we say juicify because it just pizzazz the game a little bit more. Totally what Arya said. It's basically like a Tyler jump scare. If you skip
Yeah.
forward and then like he's
It's just
suddenly right
there.
there, you're like, what? Um, of course, like you probably, since we didn't have a skip button in the published version, most players haven't experienced this. Only like the testers have right now, but we don't want you all to experience that during playtesting when we do alpha and beta tests. Um, so yeah, that'll be fun. So we have Jasmine. Jasmine's our programming intern. You guys might recognize her work in Sweetcore Brews. She really helped lay down the foundation and did like pretty much most of the work for the AR feature for Sweetcore Brews. She also did like the tea cutouts in Sweetcore Brews. She does a lot of juicifying in like our in Sweetcore Brews, and then she's doing some juicifying in the Sifting Thyme Remake. So that is one of her goals for this remake, is that she's helping Justify make the FaceTime with Tyler experience a little bit better. um,
Yeah.
in terms of testing, so like we've been testing for a while. Like we had the demo. We pulled that demo together. Like, or really you, Kira, you pulled that demo together and like I have to say, like 2.5 weeks. It was wild, and we were just play testing so much because we had such a tight timeline. We normally do not do that. Like we normally, for our past projects, our demos, we have months of time to develop. But for this, we didn't have an option because we had to launch the Kickstarter because we needed funding for this. But to launch the Kickstarter, we didn't have time because we just finished Sweetcore. Like October 17th was when it launched, right? So like that week we were like, okay, what do we do next? And like even like you couldn't even start on it yet, Kira, because like you were working through bugs that were being reported
Yeah.
throughout like launch week. So like we were like you were still working on that, and so Alexandra and I were like looking at Sifting Time, be like, okay, well, what would need to happen to make this happen so that we could do console releases next year? We realized that like we didn't have an option. We had to like have you do it in such a short period of demo development because we were coming up on Thanksgiving and Christmas, and we can't launch a Kickstarter after Thanksgiving because I would go into the Christmas time frame. Like people aren't going to be around. And also, like, we had to do it before Thanksgiving to like optimize it because like it's really hard to fight with Q4 retail, right? So that was the whole thing. So kudos to Kira for like rallying and like making that all happen in 2.5 weeks because like you literally had to build everything, like the core of everything, in that time frame. So yeah, how did you survive that? I don't even know.
I don't either. I think the dialogue conversion process definitely took one of those weeks, the whole thing,
Yeah.
to get those two chapters working properly. But from there, it's a blur.
Well, it was like we did the bare minimum that it would pass our testing standards. So it's like, okay, it's playable. But
Mhm.
like, I mean, you guys might not know this, but we were making updates to the demo like every day after it launched. So
Yeah.
we launched a Kickstarter. It's playable, but like we knew there were bugs, but like it wasn't like going to break the game enough, but like we had to keep fixing. So like every single day of that first launch week, we kept like, or Kira kept uploading new builds, new builds, new builds. The week after, we finally were able to put like chapter one out too, because it's like there were just too many issues that we had to deal with. So that's why chapter one came out not with the demo or not with the Kickstarter launch, but later because like we just had to keep fixing things, fixing things on such a tight timeline. So yeah, seriously, kudos to you for doing that. And kudos to Peter because like Peter was doing so much playtesting. Like
Absolutely.
yeah, he was playtesting into the night, writing all these bug tickets and everything.
Mhm.
And yeah, it was a great team
He's very
effort.
good at breaking the game.
He enjoys that though. And like for me, I don't. I like once I play a
Yeah.
game, I don't really replay games to be honest. Because like I don't know why I don't I replay board games all the time, but that's different because it's more social.
Yeah, it's
But like for
different.
some reason for video games, like if it's an RPG, if I love it, I'll play it once, like maybe every 3, 4 years. But I yeah, so I don't understand that mentality because that's my mentality. Is I don't even replay like full games. And Peter just replays the same thing, breaking things, finding things he enjoys. It's like a treasure hunt for him, I
Yeah.
think.
And it's
So
very
it's a
helpful for
mindset.
me.
I know, like super helpful for the whole team because I don't want to have to do
Yeah, I don't
that.
either.
I'm
I
like,
just
I've
want to fix
seen
the
this
problems.
scene. Yeah, that, totally that. Um, so yeah, we are still playtesting to this day. I think Peter, actually, you guys were running a really long playtesting session on Wednesday, right? Like I was out of office for a
Yeah,
doctor's
Wednesday.
appointment. But like I think the playtesting session was only supposed to be like an hour and a half, and I came back from the appointment and I saw you guys were still online. I think you like had like a 4-hour playtesting session, maybe even longer.
I have no idea. I think Peter went longer than I did. Yeah, that was
I
the
kept
first build
seeing,
with the saving in it, so that always introduces new problems.
yeah, I kept seeing
Especially
like
with this,
pings from
like,
him.
yeah. This game works a bit differently too. Like the saving itself is totally different from the past games too. So
Yeah,
new experience.
it's so different. It really is compared to like everything we've done on Unity for Somnium, Untold Atlas, and like Sweetcore Brews. Like we were able to like take things that we did like and like kept building on top. This is just again
Yeah.
really truly starting from scratch. Oof. So yeah, so we're still playtesting right now. I think our goal is that we'll start alpha at the very earliest. We were thinking it'd be next Friday. Crossing fingers if all
Yeah.
goes well. So that is our goal. With alpha testing, how we usually do that is we work with our Ko-Fi backers. So our Ko-Fi members have like a VIP membership with us. As part of their membership, they get to see everything behind the scenes. So they actually know what's coming down the pipeline for our company for the next few months. We actually announced to our members last week new projects that we already have planned. So as you probably noticed, like the writing is done for the game, right? So that piece we don't have to do for Sifting Thyme. So Alexandra is working on other projects right now. And then I'm sort of in limbo where I'm working on the new projects, but then also supporting ST. And then Kieran and Peter are like pretty much pure ST, or sorry, we call Sifting Thyme ST on the team. We just, I guess it's too long for us to say.
Mhm.
So yeah, so our team's a little bit divided, but alpha testing will be with our Ko-Fi members as part of their VIP experience, hopefully next Friday, if all goes smoothly. And then the Kickstarter is ending tomorrow. So there's a whole process on Kickstarter end, and this was something that like we had to learn through the first time and like get reminded the other second, third, fourth time we've run Kickstarter. Kickstarter takes like 2 weeks to process everything. So like we're sort of in limbo for 2 weeks because Kickstarter is like working with all the backers to, I don't know, level set expectations, collect funds, all the whatever they do for 2 weeks. And then they message us after 2 weeks and say like, hey, okay, you're good to go. Here it is. Go ahead. So at that point, we start working with BackerKit. So just to give you guys some insight into the crowdfunding fulfillment process, it's we choose to work with BackerKit because we have so many backers. So for reference, we had 600 backers for Sweetcore Brews. For us to have to manually manage the data for each of those 600 people and like package things, we do package all the goods, but BackerKit does it in a very nice manner where they can do group batch packaging, like data wise. They can filter all the data for us and just give us like, okay, you have like 30 different package groups. So these are all the people in package group 1. They have like these 3 items. So like we can just mass package like sort of assembly line style. And like they help us manage other logistics of sending surveys, doing follow-ups so that we don't have to manually like do all that. So that gives us more time to do development. So after Kickstarter does their 2-week period thing, we work with BackerKit to set up expectations, set up the surveys, the rewards, all that stuff, and then give it to BackerKit, and BackerKit does all the work for us. And then eventually they bring it back to us and say like, hey, this is what everything is. This is what everyone wants, all the backers wants. And then we actually do the execution of everything. So that takes time. So that's 2 weeks. We finish the Kickstarter tomorrow, which we're really successful. So thank you everyone for really rallying and helping us make this happen. Um, we'll wait for a 2-week period that puts us like end of the month, right? Like, yeah, end of the month. Then BackerKit will take a few days to do their thing. So that means the BackerKit surveys won't go out until like the first week, like a little into the first week of January. So that takes time. They take time to collect all the data. Once they collect the data, which is like your guys' information so that we can hand you guys Steam keys and everything, that means that the beta process, so we're doing internal testing right now. Alpha testing will happen with Ko-Fi backers starting next week. So that means for the rest of December, alpha back or alpha members from the Ko-Fi will be able to check it out, and then we get preliminary info, we get their preliminary feedback, any bug reports, and fix things. So that means then all the beta people from the Kickstarter. So I think the pledge is like if you're like in the deluxe pledge or whatever, you get a beta Steam key. So then we'll start sending the beta Steam keys after the surveys go out. You input your information and we deploy those. So I think it's like the second, third weekish of January. And then we run beta testing for like 2, sometimes maybe 3 weeks if things are like coming back with issues and stuff. And then we'll sit down, review how things are going, and make a call of like, okay, when's the launch date? And then make all the announcements, and then we launch. So that is the timeline right now. Am I missing anything, Kira? I think that's it for the
Yeah, I
timeline.
think that's it. Mm-hmm.
So yeah, that's sort of what's happening right now. So current status is we are still rehauling everything. As you guys heard earlier, we haven't even finished all the screen redesigns. Some designs have finished, like the text message overhaul. The phone still needs to be redesigned a little bit with all the icons. The notification bars we talked about is done. So there's bits and pieces that's done. And then there's like probably, I want to say like maybe 35-40% that's not done. So we still need to do that. And then we're still with that redesign. That means like the code also needs to happen. I think, Kira, you've been like just going ahead and putting all the groundwork down so that once the design is done on my end, I can hand it off to you and then you put everything together. And then we'll continue to do internal testing and then start reaching out for alpha testing. So for alpha testers, for our Ko-Fi members, they will not be able to see all the finished functions and everything because we're still in the process of doing that. But they'll see roughly probably like a 80% version of it in terms of features, something like that.
Yeah, I'd say so.
So 80% in terms of features, but then in terms of like the chapters and stuff, like we're still rehauling all the chapters, and that's so
Yeah.
manual because it was just coded into RunPy before. So like we have to rip all that out and do our version of it, our current version of it. I think Peter was telling me that I think we're at like chapter 7 now. Is that right? Out of sort of 14
Um,
ish.
only 4 up till 4 is in the game,
Okay.
but 5 and 6 are in progress. Like I think he's doing his version, his like grammar typo type edits, and I'm doing the conversion process for those. So they're
Okay.
almost ready, yeah.
So we have 13 chapters in the game plus epilogues, so you guys can figure out how far we are on that piece. So we still have a bit of time for that, but I think we'll still be on time in terms of the timeline that we just talked about earlier. So we did receive a question from our Discord community earlier, so thank you guys for being active. The question is, will we add Steam achievements? Yes, we are working on that. It's actually a little bit different this time because in the past, Steam achievements. Well, okay, so we first released Untold Atlas for PC first. That was like our first test, right? And that process took us a little while because I think we started porting in like April, May-ish of this past year. And we didn't finish like porting everything until August. And so we published late half of August. And we didn't have Steam achievements then because like it was our first title. We haven't really figured out all of like Steam's nuances. And by the way, guys, like Steam's like we say Apple's annoying, right? Google's annoying too, and Steam is annoying. They're all annoying. It's just different aspects of annoying. So Steam can be annoying too. We get rejections from them too, and they just have like nuances and rules and regulations as well. So for an example, like we're not able to have community assets to offer to you guys because we're not verified enough on Steam. Like they want to see a lot more sales. They want to see a community built up on their like community pages for us to offer stuff like that. So we're still learning the ropes a little bit, and also just because we don't qualify for things yet because we're still pretty indie and small. But yeah, Steam achievements was happened for Untold Atlas after the launch because thanks to y'all for your awesome suggestions. We're like, oh yeah, Steam achievements. we didn't think about that during the porting process. So that happened probably like I don't know, 3 weeks after the launch, we were able to make all that happen finally, have all the assets created for that, put it into the code, release it, test it. Well, test then release.
Yeah.
With Sweetcore, we did it at the very end of development. I want to say like the last 2 weeks of development. We like started looking into it. Like we knew we were going to add it in. It's just Sweetcore was a blur of a development timeline too.
Yeah.
So there were just too many. Like we were dealing with AR issues.
Mhm.
We dealt with AR issues after the launch, actually, right?
Yeah, I think
So
that
that's
was
why we
also the first 2 weeks or so.
yeah. So we didn't ship any of the AR cards. So the AR cards came in from production, but like we couldn't ship them out yet because the mobile version of AR was like not. It was good for iPhones, but there was some issues with some Android models depending on what model you had. So like we wanted to make sure that was fixed. So yeah, we just with Sweetcore, there were too many things that we were dealing with at launch. Leading up to launch. So the development for Steam achievements didn't happen until the last 2 weeks because it was like, okay, we got to do this before it launches, but like it was really slapped together. Not that it was slapped together in a quality perspective, but just like we didn't have time. So Peter, our intern, with his meticulousness of breaking things and knowing the data and the ins and outs of games. He's the one that's been doing all the Steam achievements, details and stuff. Um, so he's done it for Untold Atlas. Yeah, I think he did Untold Atlas, right? So he did it for Untold Atlas, Sweetcore, and then he hands you documentation, Kira, and then you implement, and then he tests, and we're good to go.
Yeah.
um, This time it's a little bit different. We've been talking about it from the beginning because we're like, let's just get it done out of the way. So he's already working on the Steam achievements right now. But I don't think he can do everything yet because we're still rehauling everything. So there's some questions about like, okay, well, how are things going to work for the Steam achievements? I think there's aspects that we have to redesign as well in terms of relationship points being like accumulated throughout the game, which might impact Steam achievements. We're also thinking about creating additional CGs. It won't be character art though. It'll be more fun stuff. Like we want to put in a little bit of Easter eggs, um, referencing our other games. As you guys probably know, like we do like to create this Nochi universe. So for Sweetcore, Titus was there. Eli Ryder was there. So we want to inject a little bit of Nochiverse isms into the game. So Peter is working on that to see like, okay, do we have Steam achievements related to this Nochiverse idea as well? So it's being worked on, and it will for sure be in the final version of the Steam version. Another question we had gotten in the past was demos. We've been working on the demo all week for Sifting
Yep.
Thyme. I don't know if you want to give a little bit of an update on that, Kira.
It kind of goes along with the way it is the first instance of saving. So that's the delay, is like working out the saving part so your data will actually cross over into the full version once it's released. Um,
Yeah,
yeah. The
we don't
Sweetcore
want.
demo's also been that was faster since it's done. But
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah. So the Sweetcore one is this is a little bit unrelated to Sifting Thyme. It is done, but like we have to go through Steam regulations on that. So
Yeah.
it's done, but we have to submit approvals, and it takes them. It can take them up to like 5 days. It's like 3 to 5 business days, so it can actually go up to like an actual week because they don't count weekends, right? So hopefully by next week, you guys can actually see the Sweetcore Brews demo. But yeah, so Sifting Thyme, that's still being worked on right now, the demo. We don't, as Kira mentioned, the save is important. We don't want you guys to, or we don't want future players or any of you all to play the demo and then it overrides like if you had a full game save stuff. Like we don't want the demo to override your full game's save data, or we don't want you to play the demo and then not have the data because like I don't know, you played it 5 times to like unlock all the CGs or something, and then you lose all the CGs when you play the full production. Like that would not be fun either. So thank you, Kira, for being very, very thorough and making sure these cases don't happen and testing everything to make sure it all works smoothly for the crossover between demo to full game version. But yeah, I think that like brings us right on time to the end of the podcast. So we are really excited overall to launch this. We said in our timeline on Kickstarter that it was going to launch in February. There's a chance it might be end of January if this is again crossing fingers if playtesting goes well and everything. But we'll keep the timeline to February just to give us a little bit of buffer. You never know what happens in playtesting. There's just things that comes up that we didn't expect, and we have to deal with it. Sometimes we have to redesign things, rehaul. It's possible that the redesigns that we made for Sifting Thyme doesn't translate. Like we think it makes sense. We did internal playtest and we're like, yeah, this flow makes sense. But then we hear really great feedback from you all where it's like when you are playing it for reals, because you guys don't have like we're in it so much that like we have a different perspective, right? And so we're biased towards our playtesting sessions. But when you guys play it and you notice like bad flows and you bring it to our attention, like that's super helpful during playtesting. So your feedback is always super appreciated because again, like we know we're biased when we're testing things out. So thank you for always being vocal, sharing your info, sharing your feedback experience. That helps make it a better game for everyone else. So things are going smoothly right now. We're really excited. If we're able to release this on time to end of January, February timeframe, our goal is to have a console version of it, hopefully by end of 2024. Don't know when they'll be, but that is the reason. For one, we want to offer PC for people for Sifting Thyme because there are a lot of people who didn't want to play Sifting Thyme on mobile, but did want to play it, just not on mobile. So one, we want to make it accessible for others, and then two, for console eventually. But yeah, thank you everyone for joining, and thanks Kira for coming along and talking about the challenges with this
Of course.
remake slash just redeveloping from scratch. But yeah, we're really excited, and we hope to have more to share with you guys very soon for our Ko-Fi members for playtesting alpha version, and then for our beta backers for the beta version in January, and then eventually in end of the January or February, maybe sometime in February, the full PC version. Thank you everyone for your support. If you're interested in staying up to date, please follow us on our social media. We will link it in the description of the video. You can find us on our social media accounts where we give sometimes updates, or we'll probably do another podcast about what's happening behind the scenes. And then if you want more details about everything that we're doing next year, please consider checking out our Ko-Fi memberships. That's where you will see information about like our future games. We also give opportunities such as development opportunities in terms of seeing some of the stuff like early character art, also getting a chance to name characters and other things. So hope everyone has a good weekend, and thank you for supporting our studio, and we can't wait to show you guys more of Sifting Thyme. Have a good night. Bye.